Hey guys, Will Briggs again. Excited to be spending this time with you guys at Cornerstone this week from a distance a little bit. Sad I can't be there, like I said, but grateful to get to help you guys with some kind of conversations and some direction in what you guys are listening to and learning and all that sort of thing. Today, we're spending time in Luke 19 and want to take a minute to talk about extraordinary transformation. Not ordinary change, but extraordinary transformation. And man, when we encounter Jesus, something happens. And so I'm sitting here reading, and let me just share a little bit. I won't read every time, every text, but this is going to be Luke 19, 1 through 10, if you guys want to go there as a group at any point. So anyway, Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town, and there was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. And so I think about Zacchaeus and the fact that he had become rich and his role. You guys may be aware of this, but the tax collector in that day was someone who, so it kind of maybe set the stage a little bit. The people in Israel were under occupation. The Romans had come in and they had taken over, and they had said, "Hey, we're in charge. You do what we say. You pay us tribute, and everything's going to be well." So they put in place tax collectors, and the tax collectors were from that indigenous people. So Zacchaeus was a Jewish person who was working for the Romans and collecting money for taxes, which you maybe think no big deal, but evidence has been kind of that up to like 90% of people's income was being taken. So there was a certain amount that they had to pay in tribute, but for the tax collector to survive, they had to add on top of the taxes being collected to kind of set some money aside for themselves and pay themselves. And the fact that it says he's become very rich means that he had taken a lot of money on top of what they already owed. And so people were being taxed to a place of even losing things that they owned, having to sell family members, like all kinds of terrible things that could happen when the money ran out. So there's this guy despised by the people around him, literally. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. And as you think about it, I don't know if you've ever been there, but you've been in a situation where like that person over there has the power, and like everybody else kind of goes over here and is like tries to figure out ways to stiff arm them and to not give them what they want, to leverage whatever they can in the way of power. And so you know that the fact that he was short and they were tall, they just kind of edged together, made sure that he couldn't see this famous guy, Jesus, who was going to be coming through. So this guy Zacchaeus, he runs ahead and climbs a sycamore tree by the road because Jesus was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. I love that phrasing. Maybe something to kind of get your conversation going today is this question. And it's kind of funny for me to think about sometimes, but like, what do you call someone when you should remember their name, but you've totally forgotten their name? So like, I don't know what it is over there, but maybe somebody would call you, "Hey guy, hey dude, what's up chief?" What is it for you, or what have you been called when someone doesn't know your name? So anyway, you can push pause, have that conversation if you want to, or have that in your group here in just a little bit. But the fact that he was called by name is massive. If I rewind, there's a text in Isaiah 43 actually, where it talks about how God has called us by name because we belong to him. And so I think it's a very interesting phrase that Luke picks, and I don't think it's accidental. And I think maybe, just maybe, I'd love to ask him one day when we're all in heaven, kind of face to face, to just go, "Is that what you meant when you wrote that, Luke?" But he called him by name, which means belonging and knowledge. So like, if somebody calls you dude or chief, and then you realize that they keep calling you that, they may not know your name, and maybe they just don't know you. But this guy is called by Jesus, the famous dude walking through, called by Jesus by name. He says, Zacchaeus, quick, come down. I got to be a guest in your home today. So here's the most famous dude. He asks to come to your house. Like I don't know what that connection would be like for somebody that stopped in today. I don't maybe you have that conversation. Who would be the famous person that if they asked to come to your house, you'd be like, yes, absolutely, come on. I don't have anything ready, but it's going to be ready. So Zacchaeus quickly climbs down, takes Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But remember, everybody else hates this guy. The people were displeased. And they said, Jesus has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. But meanwhile, you know Zacchaeus knows that these people are talking about him and that they despise him. Can you imagine being that person who's made choices and done things that other people detest you? I mean, I've done that kind of thing, especially before Christ, but sometimes I've had to make unpopular decisions. But I can't imagine being this guy who was literally stealing food out of their mouths and kids out of their homes. I mean, not directly, but causing those kinds of situations. But meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord. And if, or maybe he should say, because I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. And that number's not insignificant. I don't know if you've ever done something wrong and felt like you needed to pay back, but I remember one day myself and my best friend were playing, and we had this little rope fence, and I was lifting that up and pulling it down, and he would run under, and then we'd switch, and I would run under, and he'd lift up and pull it down. We'd try to dodge. But somehow I kind of snagged him and clotheslined him at one point, and he had a bloody nose and all that sort of thing. And so, man, I felt terrible. He ran home crying, and I went and got my favorite toy, which was this little suction dart gun that you could shoot these little darts, and they'd stick to somebody's bald head or a window or that sort of thing. And, man, I gave him one of those. It was one of my prized possessions, and I just really wanted to pay back. Have you ever felt bad enough that you felt like you needed to pay back? And sometimes we do that with God. And the good news that you guys will get to talk about, and maybe you and your leaders can talk about, is just the fact that we have been forgiven and given such a great gift. But back to the text. He says, if I've cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. So that number is super significant, because if you rewind back into the books of the law in the Old Testament, 4 times as much was the requirement for when you had maybe taken a life or taken something from somebody that could not be replaced or repaired, and especially stealing someone's livelihood or causing them to be in a situation where they were in danger of death. And so he says 4 times as much. He's acknowledging, through that number, he's acknowledging the significance of his sin. And when he does that, when we do that with Jesus, here is the cool response. Jesus responds, salvation has come to this home today. And he goes on to talk about this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham, which is super significant in the Jewish culture. He's saying he is a Jew. He is one of you. To all of these other folks who are looking at him and saying, no, he's a traitor, he's not worth anything, he is not one of us. So, and he said, for the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. And that's it. When we acknowledge the fact that we own our sin, that we have messed up and maybe done things that caused ourselves and others and God to be sad, to be hurt in any way. Like there's something that happens in that transaction where God's going, hey, thank you for owning that. I want to clean you up from that. There's a text in 1 John that says, if we confess our sins to him, he is faithful and he is just to forgive us and to cleanse us from every wrong. And so, man, just thinking through like the things that we've done, like the things that we could just sit here and heap on our heads just to go, oh man, I did that and I feel terrible about that. And then we sometimes get to this place of going, there's no way God would ever want to hang out with us. But the interesting thing is, before Zacchaeus repented, before he made his 180, before he turned away from that sin and turned towards Jesus, Jesus approached him and called him by name. And he's doing that to all of us, friends. He is calling us by name, and we can belong to him. So imagine right now, you're encountering Jesus. You think he's this famous guy. He doesn't know who you are. He's walking by, but he looks your way, and he calls you by name. How are you going to respond? So anyway, friends, hey, I'm excited for you guys to talk about the extraordinary transformation that can happen when that transaction occurs, when you receive that word from Jesus, when he's calling you by name, saying, hey, come over this way. I already know what you've done, and you'll get a chance to own that and to get rid of all that. But know first that I love you, Jesus says. I love you, and I want you to know me. So anyway, enjoy the conversations. Looking forward to sharing more with you guys through the week. Thanks, guys.